Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. The heat is really being turned on in regards to Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, aka Prince Andrew. This is a dude who has used his privilege, his wealth, and his power to avoid scrutiny within the Jeffrey Epstein enterprise for far too long. This is a man who ABC attempted to protect by squashing the Amy Robach story. And when pressed, it was all about the access to the royals. That's what they were scared of. Losing their access to people like this scoundrel, Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. So instead of bringing Virginia's story to the people, to the public, like it's their job to do, they sat on it instead. They would rather these survivors twist in the wind and not get the justice they deserve in order to safeguard their access to so-called polite society. That's our legacy media, folks. That is the dumpster fire. That is the legacy media. And you'll have people in the legacy media come out and act like they're the be-all, end-all. Act like they're the only ones who have ever cared about anything in this case. When in reality, they don't care. They care about moving units. They care about selling papers. They care about subscriptions. If they really cared about the survivors, if they really cared about what Virginia went through, then a place like ABC would have been out with double barrels blazing, trying to get to the bottom of this. But the second they think that they're going to lose access, the second it might cost them a couple of cents in clicks, well, forget about it. They have no interest in what's going on. They have no interest in the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was running a human sex trafficking ring right under everyone's noses for decades. Zero interest in that. Unless, of course, they can score political points. And I've said it from the very beginning. I think it's a great situation, right? What happened with the Miami Herald, how they dug in and what they uncovered. I think that it is superb, right? But at the end of the day, why did they have to wait until 2016? When you start putting the pieces together, it's obvious that it was all politically motivated. They were going after Trump. They knew the Acosta tie, and that's why they dug in. And that's fine with me. I really don't care one way or the other. It's about the results, right? What it unearthed. But I wish that the legacy media would just be honest about their pursuits. If it wasn't for Acosta, I highly doubt the Miami Herald would have ever even dug into this case. So when they run around and talk about, oh, it's all about the truth, it's about this, it's about that, no, it's not. It's about moving units, okay? And we saw that especially with ABC. The way ABC killed the story with Virginia and Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, etc., it's an absolute joke. And I ripped them when it happened, and I will continue to rip them. The fact that this is the parent company of Disney, and they think it's a good idea to squash stories about human trafficked underage girls so that they can reserve their access to people like Prince Andrew is offensive any way you look at it. And look, outlets like the Daily Mail, which we're going to read our story from today, they have their warts as well. But one thing I will say about the Daily Mail and others, they have stayed on this story, they have stuck with this story, and they've continued to pump out articles, and they've continued to put the pressure on people like Prince Andrew. Can ABC say the same thing? Of course they can't. ABC has been a joke throughout this whole entire thing. And for me, the way that they squashed this story, the Virginia Roberts' story when they did, it's just indicative of the way the legacy media as a whole and in general conducts itself. So remember, when ABC or NBC or CBS or any of these legacy media outlets are trying to blow smoke up your ass, are trying to convince you of one thing or the other, always remember how they squashed this story so they could keep their access to the royals. That is the most important thing to them. Making sure that they have access, making sure that they get clicks, making sure that they sell subscriptions, and making sure that they continue to run cover for their scoundrel-ass friends like Jeffrey Epstein. Our article today is from the Daily Mail. Headline: Prince Andrew survivor Virginia Roberts says Duke played a guessing game with Ghislaine Maxwell about her age when she was 17 years old before comparing her to his daughters. And this is another thing I've talked about. These sick, disgusting people, how they always bring their family up like it's some sort of excuse. You see Dershowitz has done it. You've seen Prince Andrew do it. They all do it. Oh, my family was there. I was with my family. I was with my daughters. I was with... Why would you even bring your family up in a situation like this? You people are such cowards, such non-men, that you can't take the heat. You can't stand up on your own. You have to drag your family in. What are you, looking for sympathy? This article was authored by Luke May. Now known as Virginia Roberts, Virginia Roberts, the accuser, has spoken out in a documentary series, Surviving Jeffrey Epstein, claiming she met the Queen's second son in London, describing him as an abuser and not the prince from the fairy tale stories you read. And look, this is stuff we've heard before from Virginia, right? But I think it's important that we put an exclamation point on it. I think it's important that we continue to bring it up. And I think it's also important that we continue to keep the pressure on the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. This dude thinks he's going to get away with his actions. He thinks that he's going to be able to just avoid all of this and have it all go away, like Virginia's ever going to stop pursuing justice at this point. Folks, I have news for you. She is not. She is not going to stop. She feels like this is what she needs to do, at least from where I'm sitting, right? I don't know personally. I've never talked to her about it, but just from the way she conducts herself and the tweets, et cetera, she's not going to let this go. And she shouldn't. For too long, people like this have been able to operate in the shadows, to operate without anybody saying anything, and to operate within a network of other very powerful people. And now that's getting blown apart. The light is getting drawn onto it. The curtain is getting pulled back, and people are starting to understand just exactly what was going on. And for people like Virginia and Maria and Annie and Sarah and Courtney and the rest of the survivors, they're starting to understand as well that their voice is not just a solo voice in the forest anymore. Their voice is being amplified. Their story is being told. And the narrative is being changed. Miss Roberts, who says she was trafficked by pedophile financier Epstein, alleges the Duke had sex with her on 3 separate occasions, including when she was 17, still a minor under U.S. law. Andrew has categorically denied he has had any form of sexual contact or relationship with Miss Roberts. See, for me, it's the fact that she's underage is gross on its face, right? That is just unacceptable. We're not talking about a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old here, okay? We're not talking about a guy who met some girl while he was a junior in high school and she was a freshman, all right? There's no gray area here, is what I'm trying to say. Even if Virginia was 18 or 19, the fact that the Prince of England, I can't even believe I'm saying that, the Prince of England had sex with a trafficked girl, underage, overage, or anything in between, is enough to make your mind hurt, to make your brain explode and to make you want to vomit. Add to the fact that she was underage, and it is a whole different ball game of grossness. Andrew has categorically denied he has had any form of sexual contact or relationship with Miss Roberts. Let's be clear. He also denied that he ever even took that picture with her. He would have you believe his story rather than your own eyes. These people think that their power, their station, makes it so that we would just believe what they have to say rather than believe our own eyes, as if we were all on a mushroom-induced trip and they're the only ones who are sober, with clarity. The Duke's friend, British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell, co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein, fellow child abuser, general all-around scumbag, is awaiting trial in the U.S. after being charged with procuring teenage girls for Epstein to abuse. She denies the charges. In a clip released of the program, Miss Roberts said of Andrew, who is the father of Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, "Before he abused me, when we just met, Ghislaine does this guessing game, and he guessed right. I was 17, and he compared me to his daughters, saying, 'Oh, my daughters are a few years younger than you.' She added, 'Prince Andrew is not the prince from the fairy tale stories you read.'" And that's for sure, right? Look, I am an absolute fantasy nerd. I read all sorts of fantasy novels, books of, like Game of Thrones, books by like Joe Abercrombie, et cetera, right? So, when you hear about a prince, the first thing you think about is, a prince, somebody that's honorable, somebody that's going to stand up for what's right, et cetera, et cetera. Well, when I was a kid, that's what I thought as well. And then I started reading some books like the aforementioned books I just talked about, and you find out that, well, just because you're a prince or just because you're a king or somebody who's powerful doesn't mean you're not a gray character, right? And that's what we have in real life, and that's what we're dealing with here, a lot of gray characters. These people are not good guys. They're not good people. And a person like Prince Andrew, who is the Prince of England, should strive to be something more. But instead, he got down into the mud and rolled around with the pig known as Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew deserves to be outed. He deserves to be held accountable. He's an abuser. And that's 100% correct, and that's why we're going over this again today, and we're amplifying what Virginia's saying, because it's important. It's very important that Prince Andrew is held to account for his role in all of this. I know that they say he is not a subject of the investigation, but as we just saw here in America with John Brennan, who just had an 8-hour sit-down with the FBI, they want to walk you into a perjury trap. That's what they did with Brennan the other day, and that's what they're looking to do with Prince Andrew. If they sit him down, they are going to get him into a spider web where he ends up lying. It is almost a guarantee, and that's what they're looking for. They don't want a written statement for that exact fact. They want to be able to basically cross-examine him, and he has not been willing to do that as of yet. Lady Victoria Hervey, formerly friends with Andrew and Maxwell, told the program that friendship with Epstein offered the Duke a form of escapism. Oh, that's such bullshit. I don't even want to hear that kind of nonsense, okay? Escapism? You're the Prince of England. Why don't you go on a safari? Go climb Mount Everest. Go take a hike somewhere. Go on a 3-week adventure. He offered him a form of escapism? No. He offered him young girls to abuse. That's what he offered him, Miss Hervey. She said Jeffrey definitely enjoyed the idea of being friends with the Queen's son, and Prince Andrew had just gone through a divorce. There's this American billionaire that wants to fly him around the world and introduce him to people, and it was probably an escapism, really, for him. Probably. See, remember, words matter. Probably. She doesn't know. She's trying to lay cover fire for him. Miss Hervey, why would you lay cover fire for Andrew? Let's be real. He had the ability to do whatever he wanted in the world. Like I said, climb Mount Everest, go to Antarctica, go on a safari in Africa, go hang out with the monks. Whatever it is he wanted to do, as the Prince of England, he could have done it. Instead, he chose to hang out with creepy-ass, pervy-ass, rapey-ass Jeffrey Epstein. Okay? His choice, nobody else's. He needs to stand tall before the wagon and answer for his actions. Christopher Mason, a journalist and also a former friend of Maxwell, said he once bumped into Andrew and Maxwell while walking in Madison Avenue in New York. Mr. Mason said, "He told me that he was staying at Jeffrey's townhouse. That kind of fascinated me. It just seemed like kind of a perfect instance of the kind of people that Jeffrey was hanging out with." And I've brought this up several times. Now, I'm sure most of you are familiar with New York, with Manhattan. I'm sure a lot of you have been there. And you know that there are some of the greatest, most fantastic hotel accommodations in the whole entire world there. He did not, Prince Andrew, did not have to stay with Jeffrey pervy-ass Epstein, did not need to stay in that house of rape horror, and he chose to do so. Even after he said he was coming over here to break up with Epstein. So please, save it, all right? It was not escapism. It wasn't anything besides the fact that Epstein was providing the forbidden fruit that Prince Andrew wanted oh so badly. Andrew stepped down from royal public life in November following his disastrous BBC Newsnight interview, which had led to criticism of a lack of empathy for Epstein survivors and a lack of remorse over his friendship with a convicted sex offender. Maxwell, 58, has pleaded not guilty to helping Epstein recruit and eventually abuse 3 girls who prosecutors did not publicly name from 1994 to 1997 and to committing perjury by denying her involvement under oath. And we know how close Andrew and Ghislaine were. We know that Ghislaine had free run of the keep. She could go to Buckingham Palace whenever she wanted. In fact, they would have picnics right in front of the Queen's window. Isn't that cute? Mr. Touchy Toucher and G. Maxwell, the child molester and abuser, hanging out a stone's throw away from the Queen's window. How does that make you feel, UK, my fellow Brits? I know that a lot of you were fired up from the emails I've been getting and from what occurred in front of Buckingham Palace. It's safe to say that the fantastic people of the United Kingdom have had enough of the shit. She was arrested on July 2nd in New Hampshire, where prosecutors said she was trying to evade capture and is being held in a Brooklyn jail after a judge called her a flight risk. In total, Maxwell is facing 6 counts, 4 relating to child sex trafficking, and 2 of perjury for lying under oath about the trafficking during a previous lawsuit. If convicted on all charges, she is facing up to 35 years behind bars. And remember, these are not the only charges, in my humble opinion. We know that there is a grand jury investigation that is still going on. We know that they have already produced sealed indictments. The question is, when will they be released? And there will be a superseded indictment here. There is zero doubt in my mind. What those charges are going to be is the question. Obviously, the 500-pound gorilla in the room is RICO. And that is the tool within the toolbox that, in my opinion, must be used. Maxwell's trial is scheduled for next July. Epstein was found hanged at age 66 last August in a Manhattan jail while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges for abusing women and girls in Manhattan and Florida from 2002 to 2005. He had also pleaded not guilty. And that's another thing, folks. Do you think that those were going to be the only charges Epstein was facing? Just in New York? And just in Miami? Of course not. If Epstein didn't die in jail, he would have also been facing a superseded indictment, and we would have already been looking at a RICO case because Maxwell would have been arrested, Epstein would have been arrested, and it would have been a cherry-on-top style RICO case. During her pretrial incarceration, Maxwell is being watched by a team of prison psychiatrists who are compiling a secret file on her mental health, her lawyers have claimed. Well, if it's secret, then how does she know? I mean, some of this stuff they say is just so ridiculous. These lawyers will say anything to attempt to control the narrative. In a letter protesting about the uniquely onerous conditions of her confinement in a Brooklyn jail, her legal team claims that she has been under constant surveillance without her consent. You lost your ability for consent the second you got arrested. And furthermore, how does it feel to have things done to you without your consent? Maxwell is asking the judge in her case to order that her lockup conditions at the Metropolitan Detention Center be modified to be the same as other inmates. That's such a ridiculous request. No, you're not getting treated the same. You're not going out on the main line. You're not hitting the yard. You're not going to be sitting around in the chow hall. That shit is not happening, okay? You're going to see trial. You're going to face your accusers, and they are finally going to get a taste of justice. Surviving Jeffrey Epstein will be screened on the Crime Investigation Channel with a double episode on August 25th at 9 p.m., followed by parts 3 and 4 the following evening on August 26th at 9 p.m. Folks, look, it is long past time that Prince Andrew is held accountable for his role in the Epstein enterprise. It is much, much, much too long since this man has been involved with this, and he has been able to navigate and avoid taking any responsibility. Well, bad news for him, and bad news for the rest of these people. We are now paying attention. The worst thing for these people that could have ever happened was the fact that they locked people like me in my house for 4 months. We have had nothing to do but spend time digging in to cases like this. And my friends, what we have found with just the evidence that's available to us in the articles is one of the biggest, most far-ranging criminal conspiracies that I have ever seen. We are talking intercontinental, multiple big-time players from multiple governments, and just about every single rich banker scuzzbag you can imagine. That's the scope of what we're dealing with here. And their big mistake was giving us the time to really dig in and take a look at what was going on. And now, there is only one option, folks, and that option is justice. To all my friends in Australia, I know you guys are suffering through a lockdown right now as well. I've been following the news and just want to let you guys all know that I'm with you folks, and I get it. It sucks. The lockdown stuff is not fun. We went through it here in America, here in Las Vegas especially. It was really, really tough. So my suggestion is find some good books, some Netflix series, obviously the Jeffrey Epstein podcast and the Jeffrey Epstein show, and at the most important thing for me, what I did while I was suffering through these silly lockdowns was I tried to focus on the day, right, on what was going on that day, and just tried to get through it because it is a long slog. So I hope that everybody in Australia who listens to the podcast is hanging in there. And just know, folks, everything is temporary. This is all going to end soon, and hopefully sooner than later, we will all be back to business as usual. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. As for me, I'll be back later on, and we will do it all over again. Enjoy your afternoon, everybody.